grateful to everyone for coming today. We heard from His Holiness Devamrita Swami Maharaj and His Holiness Bhakti Sundar Goswami Maharaj about this great treasure of life in the form of the opportunity to serve. I'll speak just a few minutes on this subject. Interestingly, when we speak about transcendental life, there are so many apparent contradictions. Because in order to be a servant, you have to be a master. And in order to be a real master, you have to be a servant. Does that make sense? In conditioned life, we are all serving the demands of the senses and the demands of the mind. We're walking down the street, we see something, the eyes are attracted. Well, actually, the eyes don't get attracted. The eyes just see it. And then that impulse goes to the mind, and the mind is attracted. And immediately the mind responds by either accepting it or rejecting. Either I want this or I don't want this. And then the intelligence comes in, the power of discrimination. The intelligence can decide, is this good for me or is this not good for me? If it's not good for me, the intelligence will tell the mind and the senses, no, don't do it, go somewhere else. And if the intelligence is attracted, if the intelligence discriminates that this is something good, then no matter how difficult it is, you should work and you should do it. Let's take an example. You're walking down the street and you smell something very nice. And your nose just registers it. And then it goes to the mind, and the mind says, I have to have it. I have to have this. It just smells so good. And it's a bakery with nice sweets. And then your intelligence tells you, Prabhu, you have diabetes. You shouldn't eat these sweets. That's the intelligence. But the mind's saying, I want it. And because of the mind, the senses are saying, I need it. And the intelligence is saying, no, don't do it. Now, good intelligence takes the mind and the senses and directs it away from that situation to eat some Karela somewhere. It's good for diabetes, bitter melon. But if the intelligence comes under the influence of the mind and the senses, then the intelligence will figure out the way to get it. It will discriminate and then figure out the way to get it. real intelligence, according to the Gita, is intelligence that follows the dictation of the Atma, or the soul. The real needs of you and me. You have a car, and the car needs oil and gasoline. And if you really identify with the car, you think, let me drink oil and gasoline. But your intelligence tells you, no, you need a different type of food. The Atma, the soul, is thirsting for pleasure. Why? Because it's Satchidananda. Its nature is eternal, full of knowledge and full of pleasure. But when we forget the inner pleasure of the heart, that treasure that the two Goswamis were talking about, then we search for that pleasure through the mind and senses. But as Devamrita Maharaj was saying, everything that we experience through the mind and senses is dukkhalayam ashashvatam. It is temporary. It will be destroyed. It will end in course of time. All these things that we are attached to. Being attached to people means being attached to the source of life, the soul. Being attached to bodies are being attached to things. Yes? We may think that I'm in love with someone, but are you in love with something or are you in love with someone? The mind is a thing. The body is a thing. Because at the time of death, where are they? They're just things. It's the life force, the source of life, the Atma, the soul, the Jiva. That is the one, the person. So to love someone really means to love the soul in that person. And it's practical. Even your own mother or father, if they die, there's not much love for the dead corpse. There's love for the person that has left that body. What are the needs of the soul? The soul is hungry for pleasure. Why? Because it's Satchidananda. It's eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss. And what is that pleasure? The pleasure of prema, or love. That's the only food that actually gives satisfaction to the heart. To love and to be loved. So when our intelligence is being guided by the actual needs and wants of the soul, then our life is directed toward the highest liberation. But when our intelligence is being guided by the mind and senses against the actual wants and needs of the soul, it leads us to so many karmic situations and the perpetuations of illusion. So Lord Chaitanya explained, as the Maharajas told, Jivara Swarupoi Krishnara Nityadas. The greatest treasure of all treasures is to serve on the transcendental platform. But in order to actually serve with love, in order to be a servant, a das, you have to become a master over your mind and senses. So you have to be a master to be a real servant. And in order to be, well, I get mixed up by the way I speak. At the same time, in order to master your senses and mind, it's through service. And this is what yoga is. really, yoga means, in essence, to reconnect our consciousness back to its original spiritual nature. To clean the mind and to clean the senses and bring them in harmony again with the Atma, or the soul. But in order to do so, it's very important to be convinced of what real wealth is. Things are not real wealth. Divine experience, that's real wealth. Because it brings fulfillment. Krishna tells in Gita, a real intelligent person is someone who is illumined within, who rejoices within, who finds unlimited satisfaction within. And we find the greatest people, because wealth means happiness, is it not? If you have billions or even trillions or quadrillions of rupees or dollars or euros, if you're not happy, are you a wealthy person? You might be in the cover of Fortune magazine, but are you a healthy person? Anxiety, frustration, identity crisis. And ultimately, either through an economic crisis or through death, you can't keep a single penny. But the wealth of the eternal soul is everlasting, and it's unlimited, and it brings happiness. So this Prema-dan, the great treasure of loving God, the great treasure of serving with love, because love means to serve. The difference between kama and prema, or material passion, and love, spiritual love, one is selfish and one is selfless. One is for the sake of the object of our love, and the other is to satisfy my own egoistic conceptions. Yesterday was the appearance day of a great saint, Srila Narottam Das Thakur. In his honor, I'll tell one story which so beautifully gives a real historical context to this message. Narottam Das was the only son of an extremely wealthy landowner named Krishnananda Majumdar. And he lived like those days, it was about 450 years ago in Bengal, he lived like a king. In fact, all the people in the areas where he owned the land, which were thousands and thousands of people, many villages, they considered him the king. And his only son was Narottam. That means Narottam was meant to inherit everything. He had so much home, clothes, fine foods, everything, as well as popularity and power. But when he was a little boy, somebody used to tell him about Krishna and Lord Chaitanya and different devotees of the Lord. And just by hearing these stories, he became so much attracted. He wanted this love of God. He wanted devotion. And he had a calling. And one day, it's a long story, But Nityananda Prabhu appeared to him and told him that you should go to the Padma River because Lord Chaitanya has actually entrusted the love of his heart for you in the Padma River because of your sincerity. And after receiving that, Narottam became so intoxicated with devotion. And he had a vision of the Lord who told him, go to Vrindavan and become the disciple of Lokanath Goswami. So Narottam left home secretly. He was only about 15 or something. And in those days, he had to walk to Vrindavan through Jarikanda forest. Very dangerous walking. Maybe almost 1,000 kilometers. Just a boy, all alone. And his father, when he found out his son left, was so disturbed. He paid a lot of money and hired detectives to find his son and bring him home by any means. So they found him in the jungles. And they said, we're going to take you home by force. There were many of them. And Narottam, so sincerely, he explained to them the nature of his longing and to love and serve Krishna. And he gave them some beautiful examples. And his sincerity moved their hearts so deeply that they gave him money. And they said, we hope that this will help you on your trip. And we'll tell your father that we never saw you. So when he went to Vrindavan, he met Jiva Goswami, and Jiva Goswami brought him to Lokanath Goswami. Lokanath Goswami said, please tell me about your life. And he told him. And Lokanath Goswami said, how could I be your guru? There's two problems. One is I've never initiated a disciple in my life. And after my two dearest friends, Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami, passed away from this world to join Krishna's eternal Leela, I'm feeling so much separation and love for them that it's impossible for me to take responsibility of anyone's guru. I will not, and I cannot. Impossible. And besides that, you already love Krishna. You already saw Lord Chaitanya. You don't need a guru. Just be happy. And Lokanath Goswami, he said, actually, Lord Chaitanya may have come and he may have given me some things, but I'm so undeserving and I'm so unqualified. If I don't have your guidance, if I don't have your blessings, then I'm lost in this world. And besides that, the Lord told me to accept you as my guru. Even the Lord accepts a guru when he comes to this world. So it's necessary for me to do so. Lokanath Goswami said, this is not possible. But for 1 year, I will examine you. And for 1 year, you can examine me. And today, I'm not your guru, but I'm just giving you an instruction. Today, you start chanting 200,000 names a day. That means 128 rounds every day. So Narottam started chanting 128 rounds a day. How long would that take you? It was serious. And Narottam, he didn't want to disturb. He wasn't pressing. Because you're supposed to please your guru. You're not supposed to press your guru and pressurize your guru, cause him misery. That's not the real relationship. Yasya prasadat bhagavat prasado. You know, if you force your guru to initiate you, then it's probably better not to be initiated, because pleasing him is more important than the formalities. So Narottam didn't pray. He just made his, in a very humble way, he just presented his case, and then he left it and did service. Every morning, Lokanath Goswami would bathe in the Yamuna River, very early, when it was still dark. But he was noticing something really strange. Because before he would bathe, he would respond to nature's calls. That's the way sadhus in India explain passing stool and urine, to respond to nature's calls. Sounds nice, doesn't it? And he would always do it in around the same place before going in the Jamuna. But he noticed it was always perfectly clean. And it was always just so nice, this area. Sifted dirt. And there was always a little pile of finely sifted dirt and a little pot of water for him to wash before going in. And Lokanath Goswami was thinking, what about the day before and the day before that? You know, that stuff should still be here. Where is it? What is happening here? 1 year passed. And Lokanath Goswami was asking several people, who's cleaning this area every day? He said Tamal Krishna Goswami was standing before him, crying. And Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj asked him, why are you crying? Then Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj went into a little of his background with Tamal Krishna Goswami. He said from the time he joined, or he became a devotee, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, it was Tamal Krishna Goswami who would bring him to Srila Prabhupada, would facilitate his personal interactions with Srila Prabhupada on so many occasions. An example is Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj was risking his life behind the Iron Curtain, spreading bhakti when religion was illegal. And he would write letters of reports to Srila Prabhupada when Prabhupada was passing from this world. And Tamal Krishna Goswami would read those letters to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada would ask Tamal Krishna Goswami to read them sometimes over and over again. And if special guests came to meet Prabhupada, he would ask Tamal Krishna Goswami to read those letters to them. And when Prabhupada came to London, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj and Kurukshetra Prabhu, they drove all the way from somewhere in Yugoslavia or someone, all the way to London. And when Tamal Krishna Goswami heard that he was there, he called him up to personally meet Prabhupada. And that's when Prabhupada embraced Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj and cried and said, your life is perfect. Thank you very much. So from that time and many other instances, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj always felt that Tamal Krishna Goswami is his older brother who was always the connection, a strong connection to Prabhupada. So in this vision, Tamal Krishna Goswami was weeping. And Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj asked, Maharaj, why are you crying? And Tamal Krishna Goswami said, because when Prabhupada called me from this world to join him, I had to go. And after I left, I know how much all of my disciples, well-wishers and friends suffered. I'm crying because Prabhupada is now calling you, and you must come. And I know how much all of your disciples, followers, and friends will suffer in separation from you. That is why I'm crying. This book is an offering of love and separation from the disciples of Srila Tamal Krishna Goswami to their Gurudev and to the world. It is an offering of love. And if you can afford it, please buy it. If you can't, please see it. It's a wonderful offering of love. Thank you very much.